don't know how well this is going to work, but I'm going to attempt to film how I make these dragons. This is a piece of driftwood that I found up on the beach. I've kind of gotten a rough idea what I need to do with it, but first I need to get a gap for the base. So this piece of particle board that I bought at Menards is going to be my base. The first thing is that the most amount of weight on this piece has got to be at the bottom, otherwise it's going to wind up being top heavy. So this piece of press board, which is about a ½ inch in thickness, is actually pretty heavy. And then we got these pieces of 1x3. Those are going to help support our piece of driftwood. Then we've got some remnants of the cabinet over there, and this is going to act as a second stabilizer for our tree. And then we have pieces of foam. These pieces of foam installation that it's a denser foam, and so we can curve it down. And this will be the top layer. So I kind of fudged, and I kind of fudged on the matter that I was going to do the step-by-step on this base before I actually started it, and the problem was I kept going up and down the stairs, and as most of you know, I do my own filming, and I can't carry a base, which takes 2 hands, and carry a camera and film myself without taking a header down the basement. So you guys kind of get the mostly finished taxidermy base. So what this is it's a 3/4 piece of press board, which I bought from Menards. It was like $2. And then there's some core insulation that you would put in a wall. That ran me about $3. And then this piece of driftwood, which I find really, really nifty, it's got some really interesting lines. It's very clean. It's been washed away, all the bark and stuff that would fall off of it, smaller branches. That's all been kind of washed away, and it's very clean. It's a kind of a cool gray kind of look, and it reinforces all these vertical lines here. Now when I found this, it literally had one other piece on it. It didn't have a flat end, so this was actually the other end of it. And of course I couldn't screw it into the 3/4 wood base if I had this on here, because this kind of comes to a point. It's not a very stable base, so it got cut off, leaving about a 3/4 inch base. And then inside, the foam, there's two 4-piece inches of 1/2 by 4 that are cut about 4 inches, 4 inches, and 2 inches to stabilize it from moving around on the base. It's really very solidly in here, and then not only is this wood held onto this base by L brackets, but it's also laterally held with screws to each other. So this is really solidly on here, and unless I wind up with some rot for some reason the preservation long term does not go right, which there's no reason it shouldn't, this should be good and held onto the space for like forever. Okay. Then I wrap the whole thing in saran wrap, and then if you go to Walmart and you go into the home, what is it called, hardware department, but next to the hardware department is where all the paint is and the staining stuff. There's this stuff called expanding foam, and it's about $3 a can. And what I did is I wrapped this styrofoam base with all the screws and such in it, and I wrapped it in saran wrap and then poked holes in it, and then set expanding foam into that and let it set and cure. And then I kind of leveled that out, and then that got covered with paint as kind of a sealant, and then it got covered with Mod Podge and sand, because reasons. I didn't feel like painting sand, and I wanted the more authentic look of actual sand, and so in my eyes it was like a drive the 2 blocks and go get sand, because it's supposed to be a Great Lakes beach environment. And then I found a whole bunch of other stuff. There were seagull feathers all over the beach because the birds are molting, and then there was these little pieces of driftwood. There's zebra mussels, and I thought, well, the more texture I add, the better it'll look. And then all of a sudden this base got really busy really, really quick, which is fine. I want it to be really, really interesting. I find really, the more interesting the base is, the more authentic the taxidermy feel is. And beaches can be really, really messy, and areas around nests, especially if whether they're birds or, dens for mammals, they can be really, really messy when they're rearing their young, because they're more concerned with the safety of their young and the actual nest than they are what the area around them looks like. So this kind of reinforces the whole thing, where you have a couple of pieces of, there's some glass here, and then this is like a piece of a cup. It's all stuff I actually found on the beach, so that kind of was a nice thing that makes it really, really authentic. And then last year I had some robins that nested in a bike of mine, so I waited until the young were out of the nest, and then I took the nest down and brought the basket inside. And I kept the nest. So this is the nest that we're going to use for our dragon, which goes wonderfully with the color theme of our taxidermy piece. Now the only thing is I can take this and I can wedge it into the branches of this tree, and the only problem I have is the minute I move it, it falls out. So I'm going to find a use for this, and that is I'm going to take a small 1/8 inch screw, and we're going to anchor it into here so that it gives a little bit more foundation for that for that nest to sit on, so that when it gets moved and it gets bumped around, it's not so liable for the nest to tip out. And because it came off of the same tree, it's pretty believable that it would actually, you know, be here and be on this tree. So we'll just be kind of filing it down, shaving it down, and puttying it in so it looks like it's actually grew here, not was on the other end of this tree. And then we're gonna take this nest and we're gonna permanently affix it into the tree. Now we are gonna put an egg in the nest, and thank God it's June, because when spring came around, I saved all of these really cheap, goofy eggs. This one I actually got from Pick and Save. And we're going to use these as molds for our baby dragon egg. Now, I have to take this downstairs, which means that I'm going to have to go downstairs, disappear off camera, and then I want to power brush this off just with a can of air. So I loosen up all these minor pieces of sand that, see, here's another piece of glass and some sand that's not really on there very well. I mean, it gives that really good dry effect versus where the Mod Podge is kind of seeping through, which makes it look wet. But I'm kind of okay with it being wet as long as when I'm done it doesn't look completely wet. All of this stone was actually recovered off of beaches on Lake Michigan, and he is going to be kind of a Great Lakes dragon. I haven't decided whether or not I want to go with an Eastern style body or a Western style body, but that's the project for today. So stick around. All secure. We've added a new branch. Now I can actually go through and I can add in either some more texture, or I can add in some clay to cover up that screw. But for right now, this nest sits much more securely in here than it did before. So probably go in here with a couple more sticks, which I have some. Just come up with a way of shoring this nest material up. I'm going to do that. There we go. And then we can move on.